Madam Chair, it's 2 p.m. and we have a quorum.
Well, as we have a couple people still walking in, I'm going to let them be seated before I begin.
Final cross. Let's see. I would come up and give you a huggy, but you know.
Good afternoon, everyone. Happy New Year and welcome to our new board members. At this time, I'd like to call to order the regular board meeting of the North County Transit District for January 19th, 2023. Before we begin, members of the public who may be viewing the meeting on the district's YouTube page, please note that in order to make a public comment during the meeting, you must connect to the meeting using the Zoom link provided on the agenda. And you must also register by sending an email containing your name or phone number and the agenda item on which you wish to speak to clerk@nctd.org. I will now ask our clerk of the board, Suhel Rodriguez, to call the roll.
Board Member Weiss,
Here.
Board Member Hinsey. Here. Board Member Contreras,
Present.
Board Member White,
Present.
Board Member Desmond,
Here.
Board Member Drucker,
Here.
Board Chair Edson,
Here.
Board Member Jenkins,
Here.
Vice Chair Patel. Here. That concludes the roll.
Thank you very much. Board Member Weiss, will you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you, sir. Suhel, will you please provide a safety brief and review evacuation procedures?
Absolutely. In case of an emergency, I will dial 911. In case of an evacuation, please take the stairs. Do not use the elevators. Once cleared of the building, do not re-enter unless cleared to do so by emergency personnel. There are fire extinguishers and first aid kits on each floor of the building. There is a portable defibrillator on the first floor and staff on hand trained on CPR procedures if needed. This concludes my safety brief.
Thank you, Suhel. Do we have any changes to today's agenda?
Yes, Madam Chair, the staff report for other business item number 18 was revised. An updated agenda was sent to the board and has been updated on our website.
Thank you very much. Do we have any public comments today?
No, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Before we proceed, I have a couple of quick protocol items to help facilitate orderly and timely meeting. First, I ask board members to please hold your comments and questions until after each agenda item has been presented. And when the time comes for board member questions or comments, please raise your hand and wait until you're called upon to speak. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the regular board meeting of December 15th, 2022?
Contreras moves. Patel seconds.
Motion by Contreras, second by Patel. Suhel, before I call the vote for the benefit of our new members, can you please explain how to cast votes using our handy dandy voting gadget?
Yes, Madam Chair. You each have a voting remote in front of you. Once prompted, you may select number 1 to vote yes, 2 to abstain the vote, or 3 to vote no. Any questions?
Thank you very much. Please call the vote. Or actually, please vote.
On the motion of Board Member Contreras, seconded by Board Vice Chair Patel, to approve the minutes of the regular board meeting of December 15, 2022, motion passes.
There are 14 items on today's consent agenda. Suhail, have any members of the public requested that any consent items be pulled?
No, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Are there any board members who wish to pull items from consent? Director Weiss?
11 and 13, please.
Okay. Items 11 and 13 will be trailed to the end of the agenda. May I have a motion to approve the remaining consent items? That would be 1 through 10 and 12 and 14.
So moved. This is Hensy. Second by Bhat Patel.
Motion by Hensy, second by Bhat Patel. Please vote.
On the motion of Board Member Hensy, seconded by Vice Chair Bhat Patel to approve consent items 1 through 10 and 12, motion passes.
Thank you very much. There are 5 other business items on today's agenda. Suhail Rodriguez, Clerk of the Board, will present item number 15.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, board members. The item before you is the election of the North County Transit District Board Chair and Board Vice Chair for calendar year 2023. According to NCTD's Board Policy Number 2, which is the appointment to the Board of Directors, a nominating committee comprised of 3 members is appointed by the Board Chair in November with the concurrence of the full board. And its deed is to nominate the Board Chair and the Vice Chair at the December meeting of the Board. Public Utilities Code Section 125100 states that a Board Chair and a Board Vice Chair will then be elected by the Board of Directors at the January board meeting. At the November 17th regular board meeting, the board selected the following members for the nominating committee: Karina Contreras, City of Vista; Sharon Jenkins, City of San Marcos; and Kelly Hensy, City of Encinitas. At the December regular board meeting, this nominating committee recommended that Board Chair and Board Vice Chair are nominated as the following: Jewel Edson, City of San Luis Beach, for Board Chair, and Priya Bhat Patel, City of Carlsbad, for Board Vice Chair. So the requested action before you is the nominating committee recommendation that the board elect the following members for North County Transit District's Board Chair and Board Vice Chair for calendar year 2023 as the following: Jewel Edson, City of Solana Beach, for Board Chair, and Priya Bhat Patel, City of Carlsbad, for Board Vice Chair. This concludes my presentation. Do you have any questions?
Thank you for the presentation, Suhail. Are there any public comments on this item?
No, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Board members, do you have any questions or comments? Board Member Contreras?
Yes, I just want to say I want to thank you both for your past/current leadership, since we're going to be, transitioning into new leadership, but it's going to remain the same. I think you all have done a fantastic job leading this agency and our discussions and really fighting for our mission to be able to connect our communities better, to have more reliable, more frequent public transportation, whether that's on the coaster or the buses, or finding out how to connect those who are in that donut hole, right, that weren't able to get access. So I really thank you, and I look forward to continuing your leadership. Thank you.
I appreciate those kind words. Was that a motion?
So moved to approve.
I'll second that. This is Hensy.
Motion by Contreras, second by Hensy. Please vote.
On the motion of Board Member Contreras, seconded by Board Member Hensy, to elect Jewel Edson, City of Solana Beach, as Board Chair, and Priya Bhat Patel, City of Carlsbad, as Board Vice Chair of the North County Transit District's Board of Directors for calendar year 2023. Motion passes.
Thank you. And thank you very much. Thank you for the kind words. I appreciate everyone's support in selecting me to serve as your 2023 chair, and for choosing Priya Bhat Patel to serve as our 2023 vice chair. This is a really exciting time for NCTD as we advance service and capital improvements, push forward development projects that will add critical housing for our region, improve land use, and support climate action. I'm grateful for the open and thoughtful approach each of you will bring to your service on this board. And once again, I'd like to welcome our new board members. You'll be adding your voices in the district's ongoing efforts to support our region's transit system. I look forward to working with all of you this year as we advance projects and initiatives on all fronts. As always, please feel free to reach out to me or to staff should you have any questions or feedback, or to Priya. Thanks so much. Katie Persons, our Director of Service Planning, will now review item 16, a modification of Breeze Route 347 in San Marcos. Katie will be joining us remotely as she's ill.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Today we'll be asking the board to conduct a public hearing and approve a proposed routing modification of Breeze Route 347. Next slide, please. As a refresher, Breeze 347 operates within the city of San Marcos between Palomar College and CSU San Marcos via Craven, Discovery, and San Marcos Boulevard. The proposed routing for consideration today is in yellow, and the existing routing is in blue. Due to construction in the area, the route has been on a long-term detour, which is shown in red, and which has prompted further evaluation of the routing in general. NCTD has received customer comments in recent months related to the routing and the desire to reach key destinations along San Marcos Boulevard. As you may recall from the November board meeting, there is a significant amount of housing and commercial development planned for this area in the coming years, which transforms these corridors into areas that allow us to provide much more efficient and effective free service. Next slide, please. At the November 17th, 2022 Board of Directors meeting, the board authorized staff to provide information and solicit public feedback about the proposed rerouting. Shortly after, we launched a dedicated website subpage that features an interactive map, in-person event information, and an online survey. Public notice of the hearing was published in 2 major newspapers, one in English and one in Spanish, and posted at all NCTD administrative offices and customer service centers. NCTD staff also rode several Breeze 347 trips at varying times in December and January, and held 2 in-person events, one at CSU San Marcos and one at Palomar College. Next slide, please. At these events, we had large printed maps that we used to describe the changes, as well as had folks put stickers on destinations that they either traveled to most frequently or were the most important to them. We also had flyers with maps, a description, and a QR code directing people to the website, as well as printed versions of the survey if folks wanted to fill it out and hand it back directly to us. The survey was short and intended to gather a quick snapshot of how folks are using the route or nearby NCTD services now and how they felt about this specific change. In total, we received 45 survey responses. Slide, please. Included here and as an attachment to the staff report, we have some screenshots from the web page. We had both a static map and interactive map that featured several points of interest in the city. Next slide, please. And on this slide, we have information on how to provide public comments, in-person event information, and the short survey, which was featured on the website. Next slide, please. This slide summarizes the type of public engagement that NCTD staff received over the last few months, including the survey responses, several engagements both on vehicle and at the pop-up events, and written comments from customers and current bus operators. The survey included 6 key questions and an open-ended feedback opportunity. In total, we received 43 responses in English and 2 responses in Spanish. Overall, we received a lot of positive feedback about the rerouting, especially as it relates to the current route. Next slide, please. As well as feedback about key destinations that were important to current and potential future riders. Overall, we received a lot of very specific feedback about the rerouting, which was incredibly helpful for our planning exercise. Next slide, please. So while the overwhelming majority of the feedback was positive, we did receive some feedback about concerns over the rerouting or services in general. And again, these comments were very detailed in nature, which was helpful for our planning and future planning. We received comments about stop placement and access. We received a detailed proposal, which said that this proposed reroute was essentially a step in the right direction, but ultimately the route is too short and doesn't run frequent enough to be more useful for riders today. Within that proposal, we received suggestions for extending Breeze Route 347 as well as a reroute of Breeze 445, which we're going to evaluate and examine in a bit more detail. We're not able to implement an extension at this time with existing resources, but once we're at a place where we've restored Breeze service that's been temporarily reduced, we will continue to examine that type of request in further detail. We also received comments related to improved stop, sidewalk, and crosswalk accessibility. We used those comments to help inform our continued discussions with the city about bus stop placement. We had a meeting earlier this month to preview the proposed stop locations and gather city staff's feedback and insight, and we conducted some additional in-field assessments of traffic queuing, particularly during school bell times. Assuming the board approves this reroute, we will then meet with the city again to discuss the final proposed stop locations, discuss any additional public or board member feedback from today, and discuss implementation activities, right-of-way permits, and other stop-related activities. And finally, we received comments from both riders and existing bus operators related to adjusting the transfer time between Breeze Route 347 and the Sprinter, particularly at CSU San Marcos. We're actively reviewing the proposed timetables for the April service change, so we will assess that accordingly. Next slide, please. So we're in close communication with the city, and they've been extremely helpful in providing us with a lot of information. Currently, Discovery Street is expected to be complete in May of this year. So assuming authorization of this service change in the April service change, we will still need a short-term detour for a small segment of the route, which you see in red there. Slide, please. The Federal Transit Administration requires agencies to establish policies and thresholds for major service changes that trigger a Title VI analysis, as well as relevant thresholds and data sources related to income and minority status. Slide, please. Board Policy 30 establishes the threshold for major service changes as a 25% or greater change in existing routes measured by miles or trips, or the removal or addition of a route. Both Board Policy 31 and 32 dictate key thresholds to quantify disproportionate adverse changes to minority or low-income communities, as well as disproportionate benefits to non-minority and non-low-income communities relative to the service area average. These policies also define subsequent actions for NCPD to take should a disparate impact or disproportionate burden be found. Next slide, please. These board policies also note the specific data tables that NCPD should use as part of the analysis, as well as a low-income definition that is consistent with regional definitions. Slide, please. Through this effort, we found that there was no disparate impact as a result of the proposed reroute. Based on the available data, we see an increase in the percentage minority populations served by the proposed rerouting. Slide. And we also found that there was no disproportionate burden. Similarly, we see an increase in access to low-income populations served by the proposed rerouting. And just to visualize this change on the next slide, on the left, you'll see the existing Breeze Route 347, and on the right is the proposed reroute. There is a higher concentration of minority communities that will be able to serve along San Marcos Boulevard, as you see in purple there. Next slide. And similarly, here we have low-income population. On the left is existing, and on the right is proposed. We'll be able to increase the access to low-income communities through the proposed rerouting. And with that, staff recommends that the Board of Directors review staff recommendations regarding the route modification of Breeze Route 347 and receive and consider public comments. Following that, staff further recommends that the board close the public hearing on staff recommendations regarding the proposed route modification and approve the proposed route modification of Breeze Route 347 effective with the upcoming April 2nd, 2023 service change.
Thank you, Katie. And also thank you for not bringing your cold here to share. We all appreciate that. I also appreciate the robust community engagement and that was performed, and it's good to get feedback, whether it's negative or positive, and recommendations to help us continue to move forward. So I look forward to continuing to refine the route in the future. Suhel, do we have any public comments on this item?
No, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Board, let me see. I'm going to start at this end, Priya. Excuse me, Director Bhat Patel.
Thank you. And I'll try to be fast since I saw quite a few hands up. But thanks, Katie, for the presentation, and I hope you feel better. And thanks for staying with us, even though you're not feeling well. So a couple of questions that I had. I know that there were public outreach conducted on, it was December 6th at CSUSM and December 8th at Palomar College. I was just curious, given that's usually when finals and all those other things are happening, I was just curious how well attended those events were.
Yes, we did manage to sneak in right around or right before finals. I will say we had a lot of great conversations at those events. I believe we quantified the number of kind of direct comments that we've received at those events on an earlier slide. I'm not sure if we want to go back to that, but we did try to provide information to students as early as possible, recognizing that the holidays were upcoming. So it was not the best time of the year probably to do outreach, but I do feel like we had a really great partnership with the colleges to make sure that we got the information we needed and was able to communicate effectively.
Okay, great. And I know you mentioned that there were 45 responses received. In terms of the demographics, and I don't know if we collected those, was it in line with who ends up riding that route?
In order to keep the survey very brief, we did not ask any other demographic information. The only real identifying information we asked for was whether or not they were a current rider of the route. So we don't have a demographic assessment that we're able to compare to, but given the number of responses we received, we feel pretty confident in who we've been able to communicate with through the survey.
Okay. And then my last question is around the detour. I know it's scheduled to be 6 weeks, and I know you mentioned you're in collaboration with the city of San Marcos in terms of, and I'm sure you all are considering this, but just asking for the public, how, in terms of traffic disruptions, do we foresee that impacting traffic in and around that area at all?
We will definitely be monitoring that, especially within the first 6 weeks after implementing the service change. That's kind of consistent with our typical practice of monitoring on-time performance and run times in that way. We are pretty confident that we'll be able to maintain a good on-time performance for this specific route, but we'll be certain to adjust and modify as we go. But at this moment in time, we don't foresee a major impact, and we'll be sure to not deviate from the detour until we're confident that we're able to provide that high level of service.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to work my way down the dais. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Katie. Good to hear your voice. And my one question is, what other buses does this route interact with? I know it obviously interacts with the Sprinter, but what are the other buses and how does it interact with them?
The Sprinter is the main transfer point, I would say. We do have connection at Palomar College, and one of the proposals that we received from a member of the public was related to Breeze Route 445 and nearby 305. But I would say that the Sprinter is the primary connection point for this specific route. and there's not a major transfer point for most other breeze routes.
Thank you.
Director Hinsey, did I see your hand up? No. Thank you. Supervisor Desmond?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I got a question. San Marcos Boulevard is heavily traveled road. So is Twin Oaks Valley Road. For the bus stops on San Marcos Boulevard, is there going to be a carve out in the curbs, or is this stop going to be blocking traffic in the lane when the bus stops and for pickups and drop offs?
There's not a bus pull out at this moment in time. We are in discussion with the city about future developments along the corridor and how they may impact our ability to provide service. We did do some in-field assessments just to see some of the traffic patterns in the area and how that may impact operations. We don't have a major concern at this point in time, but again, we'll be closely monitoring that soon after implementation. And we'll work with the city to ensure that all users of the roadway are able to access things appropriately.
I think Mr. Tucker would also like to chime in on that answer.
Yes, so and Katie and I had this discussion because if you looked at that list of feedback, one of the feedback was the bus stops and improvements. That's going to be something that we're going to have to work with the city on, is addressing the impacts to traffic, the impacts to us being able to get a bus in and out efficiently, and the customer amenities. So all of that's not going to be in place. And I think there are other questions we need to explore with the city of San Marcos plus other cities about how we can create a larger pool of money to make sure that we're able to make the improvements at the right locations when projects like this come up.
Yeah, it just seems like I don't know, 3 to 5 o'clock in the afternoon. It's
No.
packed with traffic and so as much I agree with the routing, but I think the interaction with traffic, I don't know if it's going to be help or hindrance or just make things worse.
Well, and I think if you go back, this highlights, we did the breeze, speed and reliability study, and pretty much what it showed was where there's congestion, then there's buses are congested as well. And so could not agree more with you. These are the things that as we move towards wrapping up that study, we have to develop a platform so that these projects, which I think benefit both public transit and road users, get prioritized so that these improvements can be put in place to mitigate and allow the successful free flow moving of buses and automobiles.
All right, good luck.
Director Jenkins?
I have a couple questions. So this would be effective April 2nd. Assuming that the road improvements do get done in May, why would we not wait until the roads are improved? Because once Discovery goes through, the speculation is that's going to pull some traffic off of San Marcos Boulevard, so it might help the bus flow better, or is there a timing issue from our point of view?
Timing issue.
Okay.
We do service change twice a year, and it's printed route guide book and information to people. And then if you were to try to, what you're saying is absolutely spot on, but then trying to communicate that information out and not match it out to the time books that are already out there is a difficult thing from the customer experience point of view.
Okay, that makes sense. And then there was a comment in one of the feedback items that email we had received about, maybe you could clarify this. The nearest stop to San Marcos High School for the current and proposed route is 0.68 miles from the school. I thought there was a bus stop pretty much in front of the school.
Well, so that detailed email that we all received, which was a very good plan, it's references to 350. And as Katie was saying, we really want to explore that in more detail, that proposed routing change, but that was relative to this route 350. And we don't have the resources at this point to extend that route or add more resources, but we need to study that request so that as we hit the momentum of being able to restore service over the course of the next year, that may be an opportunity that we take advantage of.
But isn't there a bus stop?
Yeah,
in
it
front
is.
of- Okay,
It's two different things.
right.
There's
I
a bus,
understand
there's
that.
a
There
bus
is a
stop.
bus stop there, but it's not on this route.
Exactly.
Okay, okay. And then, let me see here. Is that also accurate that we have absolutely no public transit going into San Alejo Hills? This says, I don't know if that's accurate, or maybe it's just 347 doesn't go into San. I'm not sure I've ever seen.
Yeah, that was. Yeah, that was the detailed request was to extend 347 into
Okay.
San Alejo, which it does currently.
Okay, yeah, I don't think we have any transit into there.
No,
Okay.
and remember, just in the next couple of months, we'll be coming to the board
With-
with the app award for microtransit.
Okay, yes.
And remember, amongst many of your cities, there's identified areas where we're looking to roll out microtransit.
Okay, and then, question, I see the new route is not using the new San Alejo, I'm sorry, Discovery Road. Oh, I see, because it goes Twin Oaks and this way. And it's going to go, we're gonna bypass that area over there, basically, on the, we're gonna go down San Marcos Boulevard, no longer go down. Looks like maybe Benton via Veracruz, and we're gonna bypass Craven and just go Twin Oaks and then back. Correct? I see it. Okay, I see it. And all of this is subject to change. If in the future, if it's not flowing how it should.
No, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Board Member Contreras.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I'm looking at, what is it, slide 9, concerns expressed in feedback. So I did have a question. What is because it says there's a request to increase frequency and run 7 days a week. So this is not a route that I have ever been on, so I don't have first-hand anecdotal knowledge of it. So I'm just curious, what is the current frequency and how many days a week does it run?
It currently operates 30-minute frequency during the week, Monday through Friday, and then we have hourly service on Saturday and no service on Sunday.
Okay. All right, so I see the gap there. And then I'm looking at, next improve, and people are asking for stop and crosswalk accessibility for ADA riders. I think it's just really important that we continue in our own jurisdictions and as a region to increase funding for active transportation programming, because that really does interface with public transit. And a lot of times the only way to get a public transit is to walk there or bike there. So, just want to continue to encourage folks to advocate for more dollars so that we can fund the infrastructure necessary for people to easily have mobility throughout our region when they're walking and biking and trying to transfer to public transit. And lastly, I wanted to look too at this, the last ask, which is adjust the time transfer between the 347 and the Sprinter. And I'm going to go to slide 1, which is the actual map. And so I'm seeing the little white dots. I'm assuming those are the bus stops, right? And I don't see one at the San Marcos Civic Center Sprinter station, even though there's I don't know how far the current bus stop is from that Sprinter station. But it was stated that this route interacts most with the Sprinter station. So I want to ask, how does it interact? And does it interact just because it's close to the Sprinter, or is there an actual way to transfer where it's almost like door-to-door boarding?
We do see some ridership from primarily on the CSU San Marcos side, students using the service to get closer into campus or in the nearby area. I would say that the transfer between Breeze and Sprinter is most significant at that campus, and it's at the base of the Sprinter platform is where we connect, about 100 feet away. We don't currently serve the San Marcos Civic Center station. It's a bit of a slight deviation. We can look into that in the future to see if that connection makes sense. But I would say primarily the main connection that occurs is at the CSU San Marcos station between the Breeze 347 and Sprinter.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think if we all want civic centers that are not a misnomer and they're actually civic centers, then we need to be able to get people there. I'm familiar with the Cal State San Marcos Sprinter station, and I'm also familiar that it is extremely challenging because of the distance that you usually have to walk to get anywhere. So it doesn't seem feasible to just try to route people through the Cal State San Marcos Sprinter station when they might be able to more quickly access the San Marco Civic Center Sprinter station. So I just kind of want to throw that out there, especially because this new reroute is going to be addressing some of the transportation challenges that communities of concern have. And when we're looking at, changing this route, we have demographic studies and looking at populations that could be disproportionately affected. And luckily, there's not a huge change in that. In fact, it looks like there's a positive change in some of our community members that are in areas of concern that are able to access transit better this way. But I want to make sure that they don't have to wait to go all the way to Cal State San Marcos, especially, we're hearing all the challenges with congestion. And I have heard in the past when I make the suggestion that we have transit priority lanes, transit only lanes, or something to that effect, or traffic signal priority, that there's scuffs and people don't want to do that. So if we want to actually connect people, we need to ensure that there is more connection. So I don't live in this area, but I do know that when I've tried to get off the Sprinter station and access some of the areas around the Boys and Girls Club, it can be kind of difficult. So anyways, I think it would be really good for us in the future to take a look at connecting folks to that San Marcos Civic Center Sprinter station. And at the same time, that would be a connection to the Civic Center, which I don't know. For me, I think it's just important for people to be connected to their civic centers. Thanks. That's all I have.
Oops, thank you very much. Director White, did you have any more comments?
No comments or concerns.
Okay, Director Weiss. I have White and Weiss over there, you guys are going to have to listen hard. All right. Well, with the conversation having happened and been robust, and I think we have some good thoughts for the future, may I have a motion to close the public hearing and approve agenda item 16?
Motion to close the public hearing and approve staff's recommendation.
Thank you. Motion by Contreras.
Jenkins, second.
Second by Jenkins. Please vote.
On the motion of Board Member Contreras, seconded by Board Member Jenkins, to close the public hearing on staff's recommendations regarding the route modification to Breeze Route 347 and approve the proposed route modification to Breeze Route 347 effective with the April 2023 service change. Motion passes.
Thank you very much. Katie Persons, our Director of Service Planning, is up again, this time to review agenda item 17. A little background for those who were not on the board at our December 2022 meeting. The board received a very positive update. The update concerned the district's successful efforts to hire and train a sufficient number of new bus operators to counteract past service reductions that had occurred in response to the challenging labor market. Not only does this agenda item set the stage for the phased restoration of service that was reduced last April, it also ensures that NCTD is in compliance with Federal Transit Administration requirements, as well as our own board policy related to service changes. Katie, the floor is once again yours. We were having a little trouble hearing you last time, so if you could get a little closer to your speaker. Sorry, thanks.
Will do, no problem. Thank you so much. Next slide, please. In late 2021, NCTD, among many transit agencies in the US, began experiencing an operator shortage, which in turn caused missed Breeze trips. In response to this shortage, NCTD temporarily reduced Breeze bus service on several routes in order to reduce the number of day-of trip cancellations and provide more certainty to our customers. The customer alert on the right is a sample of some of the signage and material that we produced at the time to notify customers of this change. Next slide, please. Initially, NCTD implemented this service reduction temporarily as the effects of the operator shortage were unknown. At the time, the temporary service reduction did not require NCTD to evaluate the reductions as a major service change. However, the reductions will soon exceed 12 months, which in accordance with the FTA circular and NCTD Board Policy 30 triggers a major service change analysis and process. Slide, please. Here we have a 12-month view of the number of missed Breeze trips due to a shortage of staff. You'll see the peak in early 2022, as well as measures NCTD took to mitigate the impacts as much as possible. Two key dates include the reduction of Breeze service on April 3rd, 2022, and the increase in operator pay and benefits on August 19th, 2022. Slide, please. And to provide just some additional context to that previous slide, in terms of total service provided during this time frame, we regularly track the percent of scheduled service operated. You'll see during this time, the largest dip in service operated was 96.4% in January 2022, and we've been above the 99% level since September of this past year. Slide, please. So in terms of the scale of the reduction in service, we tried to target routes that had frequencies between 15 and 20 minutes and move them to every 30 minutes. The scale of service reduction is different for each route that was impacted, and you'll note that 3 of these reductions meet the criteria for a major service change. Next slide, please. We're closely monitoring staffing levels to inform our service restoration capabilities. We've updated this table from last month's board meeting to reflect our current status, and you'll see that we've been steadily increasing the number of available operators since August, which in turn has reduced the number of missed trips during that time frame. Slide. Now that we're seeing our operator resources trending in the right direction, we're planning to implement a phased approach to service restoration throughout this year. Some of the key metrics that we've looked at to determine the order of service restoration includes the scale of the reduction, the frequency of full bus pass-ups, passenger loads, customer complaints or requests, operational feasibility, the number of nearby schools served, and social vulnerability indicators. Next slide, please. So based on this information, NCTD is planning to restore service on Breeze Route 350 in Escondido as part of the service change planned for April 2nd, 2023. So we'll be shifting that service to every 20 minutes. Based on current staffing levels, we're not able to restore service on Breeze Routes 302 and 303 at the same time. So our plan is to restore that service in October of this year, assuming we continue to trend in the right direction. Next slide, please. Similar to the previous board agenda item, a major service change requires us to conduct a public hearing, public outreach, and a Title VI equity analysis. The primary intent of this public outreach will be to inform the public about the continuation of temporarily reduced service. There are no proposed changes to routing or schedules other than the reduced service that is currently in place today. We'll plan to share general information related to our targeted restoration in October and use this opportunity to gather general feedback about Breeze Route 302 and 303 that we can use for future planning. Next slide, please. We'll use multiple forms of outreach to inform the public, including a dedicated website page and pop-up events at Vista Transit Center and Oceanside Transit Center. Slide, please. Should the board authorize a public hearing today, we will conduct outreach over the next 2 months, complete the equity analysis, and then conduct a public hearing at the March Board of Directors meeting, and then continue towards our targeted restoration of service on Breeze Route 302 and 303 in October of 2023. And with that, the staff recommendation is to set a public hearing for the March 16th, 2023 Board of Directors meeting to consider continuing the temporary partial reduction in Breeze service in response to the operator staff shortages, and authorize staff to provide detailed information to the public and receive and consider public comment regarding temporarily reduced Breeze service. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Katie. Suhail, do we have any public comments on this item?
No, Madam Chair.
Thank you. At this time, public registration to speak on this item will end. Board members, do you have any questions for Katie? Board Member Contreras?
Thank you again, Katie, for the presentation. I have a question about the criteria that's used to determine restoring service, because I don't know what it is.
Yes, so we compiled information about the frequency with which full bus pass-ups were occurring on each of these routes that were impacted. So we assembled sort of a matrix of information, and that included the scale of the reduction, the number of pass-up incidents, and so that's tracked in both the number of trips that pass-ups occurred, and then the associated loss of service in minutes. We also looked at relative ridership levels and then customer comments. And so assembling all of that into a matrix, we considered a couple of operational feasibility considerations as well in order to determine that Breeze Route 350 could be restored in April, and 302 and 303 could then be further restored in October.
Okay, thank you for that overview. The 303 is how I got here today. So I just always have to shout out to the 303. And I don't know if there's a way to partially restore services during what would be considered a school tripper hour, because it is just extremely packed, which is great, except if it's so full that you can't get on the bus and you have to wait for the next one. And since we don't have the same type of frequency, then that means that you're having to wait longer and you might miss getting to school on time or getting back home quickly so you can start doing your homework or whatever the case might be. And then the folks that, you know, aren't going to school that are utilizing the service are impacted as well if it's really congested. So I don't know if there's a way to add into our matrix being able to restore service during really high peak times. And specifically as our youth opportunity pass has been extremely successful, and we've seen that a lot on the 303 route, being able to use that data and that information of our buses being really full during school tripper hours for us to try and phase in a restoration of frequency in a little bit of a faster time frame. So I don't know if it's possible, but I got to advocate for it. I would love that. And I'm sure that the 303 is not the only bus that NCTD has that is experiencing a high level increase by our youth during peak school tripper hours. So I wanted to throw that in there. And then I brought this up before, and I think it might be important for the board to just have a full discussion on the Pronto app in the near future. But I don't know if there's a way to have like in-app alerts. You know, we do a lot of trying to engage and outreach into the community. But it would be great if on the Pronto app, it could just say, hey, you know what, take the previous discussion item as an example, right? With the 347, being able to get a survey out to folks that are using this through a kind of like a geolocation. Technology continues to get better and better. And I don't know if there's a way that somewhere in the software of the Pronto app, we can make it come alive, that there could be in-app alerts and being able to get surveys from folks. But, reduction in service or continuing to reduce service, that certainly is an alert that we would want the public to get in a timely fashion. That's it for me.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Contreras. Mr. Tucker, would you like to address item 1 in Director Contreras's comments? Because item 2 is really not part of this agenda item.
Yeah. So on item 1, what I'll do is I'll work with Katie and Damon. We capture overload reports, and we try to the degree we have resources to add plus trippers when overloads are occurring. So we'll go back and look at, because I know that was occurring, earlier on. I have not heard any additional reports, but we'll go back and scan over the last 120 days to see what kind of reports and load factors that we have on the bus, and we will let the entire board know regarding that analysis.
Awesome. Thank you. And I just want to give anecdotal evidence. I mean, we're not even I don't think this is a school trip per hour, but there's only like 5 seats really open on my trip here. Okay. So anyways.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Okay. So anyone else? Director Weiss?
I just want to clarify that the action we're taking today is only to set the public hearing for March.
Yes.
And I'll move approval of staff recommendation.
Thank you. Motion by Director Weiss.
Jenkins will second.
Second by Jenkins. Please vote.
On the motion of Board Member Weiss, seconded by Board Member Jenkins, to set a public hearing for March 16, 2023, for the board to consider continuing the temporary partial reduction in breeze service in response to operator staff shortages, and to authorize staff to provide detailed information to the public and receive and consider public comment regarding reduced breeze service. Motion passes.
Tracy Foster, our Chief Development Officer, will now review item 18. If approved, this will authorize staff to enter into executive negotiating agreements for both the Carlsbad Village Station and Poinsettia Station. I'm excited to hear about these 2 potential redevelopments. But before we proceed, I understand that 2 of our directors may wish to be recused from this item.
Yes, thank you. So this is Priya Patel, council member in the city of Carlsbad, and since I'll be making decisions on the other end with my own jurisdiction, I'll have to recuse myself for this position. Thank you.
I'll be recusing myself as well.
Okay, off to the crying room you two. That's right.
This is soundproof.
Siberia.
Okay, Tracy, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, board members. Today I am joined by Lillian Doherty, our Director of Planning and Development, as well as Mike McShay, who is with CBRE, our on-call real estate consultant. He is the Executive Vice President for Public Institutions and Education Solutions. Next slide, please. So before diving into the details of the Carlsbad redevelopments, I'd like to quickly review why we are pursuing redevelopments of our transit centers and stations. Our board policy 33, which was adopted in January of 2016, has 3 primary goals. And those goals include transit prioritization. So first and foremost, we are a transit district, and therefore any redevelopment need to preserve NCTD property for transit use and increase transit ridership by retaining existing and attracting new riders. Also, fiscal responsibility. Redevelopment projects are expected to generate value by maximizing ground lease revenues, while also minimizing risk to NCTD. And lastly, community integration and engagement. So as we progress with redevelopment opportunities, NCTD seeks to create projects that are compatible with surrounding communities and will engage with the local community members early on and throughout the land use and entitlement process. Additionally, the board has also prioritized redevelopment as part of NCTD's business initiative plans and strategic area of focus. Next slide, please. So why redevelopment? Redevelopment and redeveloping underutilized land around our transit stations and centers provides a variety of benefits to NCTD, our transit patrons, community, and the environment. So let's dive into all of these areas just a little bit more. Increasing our ridership. So increased in housing, improved surroundings, and changes to the overall transit experience are just a few ways that redevelopment can draw in new riders and encourage existing patrons to return. For connectivity, incorporating mobility hub concepts into our redevelopment brings together public transit, biking, walking, car share, and other ways for people to get where they want to go without a private vehicle. That leads into sustainability, so improved infrastructure and facilities that encourages green modes of transportation. And lastly, economic growth. So NCTD realizes long-term revenue streams through ground leases and increased ridership, while the local jurisdictions and communities will see increases in the tax base and creation of jobs. Next slide. As I mentioned, CBRE is our on-call real estate consultant since 2019 and provides support to us on all of our redevelopments. Through task order issued in March of 2021 and amended in August of 2022, CBRE is supporting Carlsbad Village and Poinsettia transit stations by providing technical analysis. So upfront, they're identifying what we can expect to achieve in a redevelopment of a site. Performing developer workshops. So before an RFP goes to the market, we perform developer workshops to stimulate interest and excitement about the opportunities. Preparing the RFP documents and issuance of the RFP, answering questions, agreement negotiations. So they support us with negotiations of our development agreements and ground lease. They also provide the support of design and entitlement review. And lastly, once the project will go to construction, they will offer support to us then.
The Carlsbad Village site is a 14.37 acre site with 11.33 acres of developable land in the heart of downtown Carlsbad. It serves 800 riders on an average weekday. This location is primed for redevelopment with only a short walk to restaurants, retail, and local beaches. At the Carlsbad Village Transit Station, it is key for any redevelopment to replace a minimum of 435 dedicated spaces for transit riders, as well as to ensure that a redevelopment accommodates the future Carlsbad Village Trench project. The next slide. The Poinsettia Transit Center is a slightly smaller site with approximately 11.47 acres and 4.87 acres of developable land. This is largely in part due to a conservation easement that runs adjacent to the rail line on the western third of the property. This conservation area will remain in place and undisturbed by future development. The site currently serves an average of 440 transit riders each weekday on both coaster and breeze modes of service. Redevelopment of the site will require replacement of at least 341 dedicated spaces for transit riders, as well as at least 5 bus bays, with a minimum of one of those spaces accommodating a 60-foot articulated bus. Next slide, please. A request for proposal, or RFP, was released in April of last year, with proposals due in July. The RFP stated that a developer could submit a proposal for either or both sites, but that proposals for each site would be evaluated independently on its own merits. Next slide. The RFP described 4 goals for the solicitation in line with the Board Policy 33: to provide a long-term revenue stream, replace parking for transit riders, improve the transit rider experience, and to contribute to the regional housing needs with a focus on affordability. Next slide. The specific requirements for both sites included entry into a long-term 50 to 99-year ground lease, improvements to passenger experience, such as waiting area amenities like shade structures, consideration of community integration, and that proposals meet the minimum affordability requirements of 15% as specified in the Carlsbad Municipal Code. Next slide. The RFP encouraged developers to consider desirable features like green space, art, and mobility-related amenities. NCTD envisions that the future projects will be walkable communities that complement the surrounding neighborhoods and encourage community engagement through public art displays, open green spaces, and retail and dining options. Next slide. In the city of Carlsbad, there are several applicable planning and zoning requirements, which will be applied during the project's entitlement review. The RFP encouraged proposers to consider and be consistent with these plans as part of their submissions. Next slide. The solicitation successfully received 6 proposals from 3 developers: Raintree Partners, Holland Partner Group, and West Village Partners. West Village Partners is a partnership between Seabreeze Properties LLC and Fabric Investments, Inc. One proposal for Poinsettia was later rescinded for a total of 5 proposals that were evaluated, reviewed, and scored. Next slide. A source selection committee, or SSC, was convened to evaluate the proposals. The SSC was made up of 4 members of NCTD staff and 1 external member from the San Diego North County Economic Development Council, as well as non-voting technical member advisors from NCTD's on-call real estate consultant, CBRE. Through a robust review, evaluation, interview, and selection process, the SSC analyzed each of these proposals. Next slide. The proposals were scored based upon the criteria identified on the screen, which were also included in the RFP. The SSC review process of review occurred over 5 phases, beginning with individual review of each of the proposals, moving through technical advisor analysis, requests for clarification, and initial scoring. The SSC process also included interviews and a request for best and final offers from each of the proposers. The 6th and final phase of the SSC process is this board's review and consideration of the SSC's recommendation. The West Village Partners, again, a partnership between Seabreeze Properties LLC and Fabric Investments, Inc. proposal included several components that would support transit riders and the community. Although the city's requirement for affordability is, as I mentioned, 15%, the proposal offers 27% affordability, exceeding the city's minimum affordability requirements, as well as offering a mix of land uses that will activate the transit center and public areas, as well as provide amenities that expand upon the existing character of the Carlsbad Village. Specifically, the West Village Partners proposal prioritized transit by making improvements to the transit center and the platform, ensuring dedicated parking for transit riders, activating and extending the transit center with 17,000 square feet of ground floor retail. As proposed, the redeveloped Carlsbad Village Transit Center would be an active public space with artistic elements and connections for bicycle and pedestrian traffic. The site would incorporate a boutique hotel for visitors, office space, and both market rate and affordable housing units, as well as a green beltway and outdoor spaces. Next slide. At Carlsbad Poinsettia Station, the SSE recommends Raintree Partners, a developer with a strong portfolio of multi-family units in coastal Southern California. Raintree Partners is based in Dana Point and backed by a single equity partner that has already committed $1 billion to successful multi-unit development. Raintree Partners presented a proposal that focused on community integration and connectivity to existing active transportation pathways. This also included several improvements that will support transit riders and regional housing goals, reduce automobile dependence, and provide for an active lifestyle. Next slide. Specific features of this proposal includes a 345 stall dedicated parking garage for transit riders and ticket facilities along an open air paseo that is bounded on each side by 5,000 square feet of retail and dining amenities. Bus and rideshare commuters will be brought across the site adjacent to the platform bridges through thoughtful integration of bus to rail connectivity. In addition, the Raintree Partners proposal prioritizes an active lifestyle with connections on site to the coastal rail trail and through outdoor amenities such as a dog park, playground, and mobility hub specific features. The proposal includes 146 market rate housing units and 31 affordable units with a separate parking structure with 298 parking stalls for resident and visitor use.
So if approved by the board today, we would proceed in entering into an exclusive negotiation agreement. We would anticipate that this agreement term would be for a period of 2.5 years to complete the following: negotiating of the business terms associated with the development agreement, a ground lease, and any other related documents required for the redevelopment. It would also allow for the developer to perform due diligence on the property. So that could include a variety of inspections, surveys, that type of thing, review of any documents that NCTD may have on the property. It would also include the developer going through final design and environmental documentation in order to submit to the city of Carlsbad to go through the entitlement process of the city for the project. We would return back to the board for approval of all of the negotiated agreements. And as proposed right now, the entitlement period for Carlsbad Village is anticipated to begin even as soon as the end of this year through 2025. And Poinsettia, same through 2026, with construction starting for Carlsbad in 2025 and Poinsettia Station in 2027. So with that, staff recommends that the Board of Directors authorize the Executive Director to enter into an exclusive negotiation agreement with West Village Partners for the redevelopment of the Carlsbad Village Station and Raintree Partners for the redevelopment of the Poinsettia Transit Station. Next slide. That concludes our presentation, and we are available for any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Tracy, Lillian, and Mike. Mike, right? I know you didn't talk, but you're here. Sahel, do we have any public comments on this item?
No, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. At this time, public registration to speak on this item will end. Do I have any questions from board members? Yes, I'm seeing hands raised. So I'm going to start at the Peter Weiss end of our dais.
Thank you. Is there anything in the RFP or what will end up being in the negotiating agreements that would preclude either of these developments from taking advantage of density bonus enhancements and protections?
No, nothing.
Well, since they're both over 15% affordable, I would recommend they look into it.
Thank you. Next on the dais with a question. Can I see hands again? Board Member Contreras.
these are two really outstanding proposals, and being able to have more density next to public transit is a win-win. I just have a quick question. So we're gonna have one bus bay for a 60-foot bus, which is an articulated bus. Is this the first bus bay that we have in NCTD that will accommodate an articulated bus? And does that mean that we are planning to have an articulated bus in the future?
Easy answer, no, we're not planning to have articulated buses in the future. This will likely be one of the first locations where we can accommodate it. I do think as we look at some of our future redevelopment projects, especially at coaster stations, where 60-foot buses do come into play is with MTS and their support of bus bridges. And we need to be able to make sure we can accommodate a bus bridge that could include a 60-foot bus.
Okay, and so is that, okay. A bus bridge, are you talking about in case that?
Bus
the
replacement service when their coaster
Right.
or something goes out of service.
Or maybe a bus rapid transit system in the future?
Well, those are different things we are, so. Yeah. I think in terms of your larger question, we have no plans to be moving towards articulated bus fleet.
Okay, all right, but
Everything
we
else
want to
we do.
adopt one in case we need it from
Yes.
NTS. Okay.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, that's really exciting to me because I saw that. I'm like, this has got to be the first one that we're right. And we need the infrastructure if we're going to accommodate a bus bridge. So anyways, that's it for me.
Thank you very much, Director Jenkins.
Just a couple questions. The affordable will be fully entitled as what I'm thinking of as affordable, not just costs less, but fully affordable homes, condo, whatever it is, deed restricted.
Yes.
Okay.
To clarify, so yes, they will be fully encumbered.
Okay,
Affordable homes, based upon, the RENA criteria for how much they would cost
Okay.
and the requirements.
and then on the Poinsettia Station, I see they were able to get 17% of affordable stock. As we move forward, is it possible their numbers could increase and be more affordable, or are they locked into this?
We go through the negotiation period. This is what has been currently
Okay.
proposed to us.
Okay,
And-
okay,
And I think just to piggyback a little bit, if you go see the two different sites, you can see it's
size.
dramatically different in terms
Okay.
of Poinsettia is a station essentially where it's the parking lot at the back of a development, as it sits today. There's not a whole lot of opportunity as compared to the size and scale of the village
okay,
project. So, at the end, and Sharon, all of these have to pencil from a mathematical point of view and taking that into consideration of the, I don't really see a dramatic opportunity to really
For more.
uplift that number unless something changes.
okay. And I think that's all I had. I like that we're still gonna have adequate parking at both spots. So that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Director Hensy, did I see your hands up?
Yes.
Thank you.
So thanks for the presentation. It's really exciting. They look like very high quality projects with a lot of things that I see folks of my generation and my parents' generation finding desirable. So I hope that we can populate these with residents as soon as they're built. I had some questions about the affordability. Is it in our sphere of control as NCTD that we would be trying to figure out what level of affordability those units would go to, or is that going to be decided through Carlsbad's entitlement?
It all goes through the Carlsbad process and in the entitlement process. Certainly, we review the design and we review all of this information and we encourage as much affordability as possible.
Okay, and it looks like when onsite was one of our preferences for the affordable units. Both projects are gonna make good and actually have these sites on site. Okay, that's great. And then I know in the city of Encinitas, when we were developing some of our high density projects, it was important to the council at that time that we did our best to strive for the market rate units to be catering to certain missing middle folks, which seems like a good value for us, especially if we want to have, Director Contreras has pointed out, we should hire our staff. We should hire people who work for NCTD. And so maybe some of those folks would fit in the missing middle. Well, is that something that we could suggest as a value to these developers, or would that also be up to the city of Carlsbad?
This is all a negotiation, and I believe that we can have that discussion to encourage them to consider. I believe that it is a negotiation, and as we work through the process, we can make that suggestion, certainly.
Great. Yeah, I would say like values for the city of Encinitas when we went through this was that some of the affordable units include multiple bedrooms so that you could have families of bigger sizes who are able to live there. That they're comparable to the market rate housing in terms of, windows and kitchens and things that sometimes get penciled out when the numbers start coming in. And that also there would be, for some of the market rate units, they're not so massive that they become luxury just in terms of how big that they are. So if there's some way for there to be an average square footage that it turns out the way that we want it, which is that none of these apartment buildings are too huge, that would be my preference. The last thing that I will make a note of is that some of us serve on the RECE committee, and we're discussing the quality of life improvements. One of our goals, I think, is to have quiet zones for our communities. And this project to me just illustrates the forward thinkingness of establishing a quiet zone in our communities, especially of Encinitas and Carlsbad, because we want this to be a desirable place for people to live. And as landlords, we want to not have turnover due to the fact that people can't sleep at night if the train's honking its horn and things like that. So I will just reiterate that I hope we can come to a consensus on a programmatic quiet zone for, for the regions that we serve. And let's see. Those were all of my comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Board Member Drucker.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Was part of the evaluation community outreach at all?
Not at this time. What we will go to.
What I mean by is plan for community outreach.
Oh, absolutely. That was one of the evaluation criteria.
It isn't on the.
It was specifically brought up during the interview process, a detailed plan for public outreach. It was considered by the SSC as being very important to make sure that these projects took into consideration the public's thoughts about how well they fit into the community, the amenities, as well as the projects will go through a robust entitlement period, which does require also public outreach as part of that.
And I would want to make sure that as we are negotiating this, that we have some type of plan for public outreach. Okay, specifically build into the plan beyond the entitlement process.
Yes, so sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but we have already engaged with Chris Orlando's team so that we can be ahead of the game in outreach and with a consultant to help us through that process.
Yeah, so I would just as a point of history, we have had problems with other cities in terms of development projects, and at the last minute, the city pulled out.
Yes, great.
Director Contreras.
Very briefly, I just want to say I second everything that Board Member Hinsey said. And I think if it is in our wheelhouse to have negotiations so that we can have a better tool for recruitment as like a benefit package for affordable housing, in particular for our bus operators or service and mechanic workers, seeing as how those are the folks that we need to have as the backbone of this agency. I'm all for that. And I appreciate you asking the question in the way that you did. And it looks like we have a little bit more information about how that gets done. So I just wanted to second that. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I don't think we have a motion to second yet. However, I want to thank everybody on the dais today for their comments and for their interest in this topic. As Tracy reported today, and Lillian, Redevelopment of our stations stands to bring benefits to transit riders, to surrounding communities, as well as to the district. And I'm hoping that we will work closely with the city of Carlsbad and all cities as we move forward and do ample public outreach and listen to some of the opinions of the board and comments of the board. I'm very excited to see 2 more potential redevelopments reach this milestone. And I look forward to even more as our development team continues to advance other redevelopment opportunities in other cities and at other locations. That said, do I have a motion?
I'll move approval. This is Hinsey.
Contreras will second.
Moved by Hensy, second by Contreras. Please vote.
On the motion of Board Member Hensy, seconded by Board Member Contreras, to authorize the Executive Director to enter into an exclusive negotiation agreement with West Village Partners for the redevelopment of Carlsbad Village Transit Station and Raintree Partners for the redevelopment of the Poinsettia Transit Station. Motion passes. Board Vice Chair Bob Patel and Board Member Desmond have recused themselves.
Thank you very much. We are going to move on, but before we do, we're going to welcome back our missing members. So as we move on, as we were waiting for them to rejoin us, Roger Alfaro, partner at, is it Eide Bailey? Oh, gosh, I did it right. Thank you. And CTD's independent auditors are with us today to review agenda item 19. Each year, the board receives a presentation that reviews the prior year's financial results. Welcome, Mr. Alfaro. The floor is yours.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the board. My name is Roger Alfaro. I'm a partner with the firm of Eide Bailey and had the lead responsibility for the audit. Next slide, please. We were engaged to perform the audit of the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2022. And the audit services include an audit of the annual comprehensive financial report. I'll refer to it as either the annual report or the financial statements. In addition, in accordance with government auditing standards, we have also issued our report on internal control over financial reporting and on compliance. And then in addition to that, we were engaged to issue a report on compliance over major federal programs. This is referred to as the single audit. Next slide. As your independent external auditor, our responsibilities to form and express an opinion as to whether the financial statements, which are the responsibility of management with the oversight of this board, are fairly presented in all material respects in accordance with U.S. generally accepted accounting principles, or as we refer to it as U.S. GAAP. In addition, our role is to express an opinion as to whether the district complied with those requirements that are considered direct and material with respect to federal or major federal programs for this fiscal year. Our responsibility is to plan and perform the audit to obtain reasonable assurance. It's not absolute assurance. And it's important for us to communicate that because even though the audit is performed in accordance with all professional standards, there is a risk that a material misstatement or instance of non-compliance could go undetected. While during the course of the audit process, we consider internal control over financial reporting, and we also consider internal control over direct and material compliance requirements for major federal programs. Those considerations are solely for the purpose of determining our audit procedures, and we do not provide any assurance concerning that internal control. Next slide, please. Based on the evidence that we gathered throughout the process, we've issued an unmodified opinion on the financial statements. That is also referred to as a clean opinion and is the highest level of assurance that the district can achieve in the financial statement audit. Our auditor's report includes a paragraph that we refer to as an emphasis of matter. And that emphasis of matter identifies that the district adopted a new accounting pronouncement for this fiscal year reporting period, which was required by accounting standard setters. In accordance with government auditing standards, in our report on internal control over financial reporting, we did not report any material weaknesses in the internal control over financial reporting, nor did we report any instances of non-compliance with laws and regulations applicable to the financial statement audit. In relation to the federal compliance audit, the major program that was selected this year is referred to as the Federal Transit Cluster. And based on the procedures we performed there, we issued an unmodified opinion on compliance. Again, the highest level of assurance that the district can achieve in the single audit or the federal compliance audit. And no material weaknesses were reported as it relates to the single audit. Next slide, please. As part of our required communications, we have complied with all relevant ethical requirements regarding independence. In addition, we highlight and communicate to you that the financial statements contain a variety of accounting policies that are used to prepare the financial statements. The significant accounting policies are summarized in note 1. And in addition, as I previously stated, the district adopted a new accounting pronouncement referred to as GASB 87, which relates to the accounting for leases. In that standard and the adoption of that standard and the impact on the financial statements are described in notes 1, 2, and 10 to the financial statements. As part of the audit process, there are certain areas that have the potential for being having a higher risk of misstatement. And in these areas, we as your external auditors, we devote specific attention to testing these areas. We refer to these as significant risks. All audits have significant risk from a planning standpoint. In our audit for this fiscal year, we identified the risks related to the potential for management override, revenue recognition, and the adoption of a new accounting standard related to the accounting for leases as significant risks areas. Accordingly, we devoted time and effort, identified special procedures from the audit perspective in gathering our evidence to issue and conclude on our opinion. Next slide, please. We communicate to you that the financial statements contain estimates that's required by accounting standards and US GAAP. Certain estimates are considered significant estimates because of the nature of the assumptions or considerations that are used to develop those amounts at fiscal year end. We've identified the fair value of the interest rate swap, the recognition of the net pension liability, as well as the liability associated with other post-employment benefits, which are identified in notes 8, 13, and 14 respectively as being significant estimates. We also consider those as sensitive disclosures, and those disclosures contain the assumptions and the nature and the terms related to those dollar amounts. During the course of the audit, any misstatements that we identify are brought to the attention of management. In accordance with professional standards, there are uncorrected misstatements, and I'll provide a little more background on that. From the standpoint of, as an external auditor, we bring misstatements to management for consideration. If they're material, we ensure that those are actually posted to the financial statements. Items that are considered immaterial can be brought to the attention of management. If management identifies it and concurs or makes the assessment that they're immaterial, they don't have to be recorded in the financial statements for that period. But from a transparency standpoint, we as your external auditors bring this information to you so that there's a consideration of those items in future periods. At June 30th, 2022, the cash and investments that are reflected on the balance and the statement of net position are overstated by $1.3 million. And that is specifically related to the recognition of fair value. Accounting standards require that investments at year end be recorded at fair value. So there's an unrealized loss, although transactions that are made, deposits to the government pools or withdrawals from those government pools are transacted on the basis of $1. So from a reporting standpoint, that's one of the things that we bring to your attention. In addition, as we tested the implementation of the lease accounting standard, we identified some differences in the amounts of $53,000, $50,000, and $52,000 respectively related to the lease liabilities, right to use assets, and related expenses. Altogether for the year, the net impact of these uncorrected items is $1.3 million on the current year change in net position. Again, we brought these to the attention of management. They determined to be immaterial, and as the external auditors, we concurred that these are immaterial. Next slide, please. Management's informed us, and to our knowledge, there were no consultations with other accountants regarding accounting, auditing matters. If there had been, we're required to disclose those items to you. We're pleased to report during the course of the audit that we did not encounter any significant difficulties in dealing with management, nor did we have any disagreements regarding audit, accounting, or financial reporting matters. Next slide. This concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to address any questions.
Thank you. Suhail, do we have any public comments on this item?
No, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. At this time, public registration to speak on this item will end. Board questions. Okay, Board Member Jenkins.
I have just one question. When you talked about the uncorrected misstatements, and that the auditing team concurred that the $1.3 million was not material. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? I mean, in my mind, I think $1 million is material. I could see 50-some thousand not being material, but why would $1 million not be material?
From the perspective of planning the audit, we assess and develop a materiality. When we look at these types of misstatements or differences, we consider the nature of the difference, and then we consider the dollar magnitude of that difference in relation to a user relying on the financial statements. So for context, that 1.3 million, number one, the nature of that difference is purely a reporting item at June 30th, 2022. So when we say cash and investments is overstated, we validated the cash and investment balances, but for reporting, it's an unrealized loss at June 30th. And every year, the unrealized loss or gain changes from period to period. We're not saying that the cash is missing. We're not making those statements. It's just a reporting item. So we consider the nature of that first. Second, in relation to the total assets of the organization, the total assets for the fiscal year were $988 million approximately. So evaluating that $1 million is a fraction of 1%. And again, those are the two considerations that go into evaluating whether something's immaterial to the financials.
That helps. That helps. Thanks. And I just also want to comment to our staff. I mean, we have a very complex organization with, luckily we have you, where money flows from a lot of agencies, a lot of, it's very complex. So I just want to compliment staff for the work you do and how you're able to keep us informed at the level we need to be informed. So thank you very much.
Do I have any other questions? Director Weiss.
Thank you. This really isn't a question, but on page 80 of the financial report, there is a 10-year history of passenger boardings by mode. And I'm just going to pick on the coaster for right now. In 2013, there were 1.6 million boardings, and now we're down to 588,000. And those are boardings. So I'm a big picture, keep it simple. If 1,000 people get on the coaster in Oceanside in the morning and go to Sorrento Valley or San Diego, and then get on the train in the afternoon and come back, that's 2,000 boardings. If they do that 5 days a week, 50 weeks of the year, that's 500,000 boardings for 1,000 people. And we're spending about 54 million for the coaster. So my question is, at what point do we look at the cost of providing service to those people? And I know the numbers are, I'm just keeping it simple, versus what is the plan to increase ridership on both the coaster and the Sprinter? The Breeze is probably the most successful. And to me, it's like we should be putting more money into the bus routes than into the train. So is there a plan? Is there an active plan to increase those boardings?
Yes, there's a detailed plan. And in fact, either in February or March, the board has received a series of presentations from Deloitte that's supporting us in terms of our ridership development. So that presentation is going to come back. I just wanted, for clarity purposes, it doesn't cost $54 million to operate the coaster. So when you see that, that's a reflection of the right-of-way costs, and because the district owns the railroad and we're responsible for maintenance of the railroad, the support. So if we stop operating the coaster today, so we can stop operating the coaster today or tomorrow, that number doesn't go to zero. That number, I think, decreases about about $17-18 million. Yeah, but it's how it's classified, and I'm just speaking from the nature of our operations is that we own that railroad right away.
I'll move approval, staff recommendation.
I'm sorry, who was that? Oh, thank you. Motion to approve by Director Weiss, second by Director White. Please vote.
On the motion of Board Member Weiss, seconded by Board Member White, to receive the FY 2022 financial audit results and annual comprehensive financial report, motion passes.
Thank you very much. Thank you both for coming, and thank you. Yoon is always available for board members, since we have some new ones, for questions. And just wanted to open that up, and also the Deloitte presentations that our executive director referenced are available, I believe, on YouTube for if you want to take a look at those old ones, because there's a lot of really relevant information. Okay, so we had a couple of items pulled from consent by Director Weiss. I believe that was item 11 and item 13.
Thank you. I have a question on item 11. The funding for these assets look like they're grant funds. As these are capital assets, do you routinely put money aside to eventually replace those capital assets? Or is it you just hope to get a grant?
No, so we get various types of grants. So some of it is formula, and then some of it is discretionary grants. So in the course of pursuing any typical type of activity, we got formula FTA. It was 5307 program dollars that we would typically use. But we also look, because we always have more capital needs than money available. So we will look to leverage between a discretionary grant as well as a grant like the LC top, in terms of a grant that's available that has a level of flexibility. So it becomes a hodgepodge. We don't set aside money because based upon the federal requirements, you don't hold money. You state, I'm going to purchase XYZ with it, and there's a timely expense of funds. So what we have is a transit asset management plan and a capital plan that kind of allows us to know that the buses, typically we run them about 15 years or 500,000 miles. And so we know, based upon that replacement schedule, we should be replacing X amount of buses, every few years to keep the fleet at a state of good repair.
Okay, I'll move approval.
I'll second the motion.
Motion by Director Weiss, second by Director Hensy on item 11. Please vote.
On the motion of item number 11, with Board Member Weiss, seconded by Board Member Hensy, to authorize the exercise of options for the purchase of 4 fuel cell electric transit buses pursuant to agreement number 671901 between the state of Washington and New Flyer Industries. Motion passes.
Thank you very much. Director Weiss, you also had a question on item 13.
I just want to make sure. So the action we're taking, approving the budget, really the only one we're approving is attachment 13C as far as expenditures for this next fiscal year.
Correct.
I'll move approval of
Correct.
staff recommendation.
Motion by Director Weiss, second by Director Edson. Please call the vote, or excuse me, please vote. I get tired and I revert back to Zoom.
On the motion of Board Member Weiss, seconded by Board Chair Edson, to approve the FY 2024 to 2028 Capital Improvement Program. Motion passes.
Thank you very much. Executive Director's report is next on our agenda. Mr. Tucker?
I will make this quick. Consistent with what you saw on the agenda today, we should be receiving another proposal for development related to Escondido in February. We will be following up with the usual communications. We will just be receiving them, and it will take us a few months to complete our review and come back to the board with a similar request that you saw on the agenda today. So good news, we're moving these things forward as quickly as possible. So thank you. That's my report.
Thank you very much. Do any board members have comments or reports? No, I have a little teeny report, which is things are looking better in San Clemente. It's taking time and hopefully we will be open and again soon. No date certain. Let's see, Sue Heller, are there any remaining public comments?
No, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. At this time, public registration to speak on public communications will end. Thanks, everyone. Our next scheduled meeting will be the Rail Service and Community Enhancement Commission meeting on February 7th at 11 a.m. and our regular board meeting, February 16th, 2023 at 2 p.m. Meeting is adjourned.